welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at something that's constantly at play in our lives, whether we realize it or not. It's this subtle art of emotional strategy. Think about those individuals who just seem to navigate social complexities with this almost like uncanny ability. What's their secret?
It's often not about grand pronouncements or forceful tactics. Instead, it's a deeper understanding, really, of the emotional currents that drive human behavior. Recognizing that logic isn't the only factor, and, well, often not the primary one that can really shift how you approach interactions and leadership.
Right. And we'll be exploring this through a lens that might sound a bit, well, intense. Machiavellian intelligence.
Yeah, that name.
But let's immediately clarify. We're not talking about villainy or, manipulation in the common sense.
Yeah.
This term, it originally came from studying primates, actually. It simply refers to the cognitive skills involved in understanding and navigating social dynamics. And emotions are, well, a huge part of that landscape, perceiving what others might be feeling and thinking.
Precisely. Think of it as a set of observational and analytical skills applied to social situations. It's the ability to sort of read the room, to anticipate how others might react emotionally, and maybe to influence the direction of those emotions, hopefully constructively. It's really a toolkit, isn't it? And like any tool, its value depends entirely on the user's intent. Our focus today is on understanding how this capacity we all kind of have can be harnessed for, well, positive outcomes.
So over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack what emotional strategy truly means in our day-to-day lives, and how developing a keener awareness of it can offer you, the listener, a powerful new perspective on leadership and the dynamics of influence. And if exploring these sort of hidden drivers of human behavior intrigues you, definitely hit subscribe so you don't miss future deep dives. We also, really appreciate hearing your thoughts in the comments section.
Okay, so let's get down to the core of what we actually mean by Machiavellian intelligence. If you strip away the maybe negative baggage of the name, it's fundamentally about the mental capacity for social maneuvering, understanding, and anticipating the thoughts, and crucially, the feelings of others.
So it's like having a heightened awareness of the unspoken stuff, the undercurrents in social interaction.
Exactly. And it involves, I'd say, three key abilities. First, there's emotional forecasting, the skill of predicting or trying to predict how someone might feel in a certain situation.
Okay.
Second, perspective taking, really trying to understand another person's emotional reality, even if it's, totally different from your own.
Which can be hard.
It can be very hard. And third, social influencing, which is about guiding emotions, not controlling them outright, but subtly steering them.
It sounds like a very nuanced set of skills. And it's important to reiterate that point, while the name might hint at self-interest, the modern understanding sees this as a neutral cognitive ability.
Right. Absolutely. It's the how of social engagement, the mechanics, if you will, the why, the motivations behind it. That's what determines whether these skills are used ethically and effectively. Now, let's look at the real power of emotional strategy when it's actually in action. It's not about telling people how to feel, not at all. It's about being a careful steward, maybe, of the emotional environment.
A steward. I like that. And when that's done well, the positive effects can be, well, profound. We're talking about the ability to de-escalate tense situations before they blow up.
Yeah.
Building real loyalty and trust within teams, that deep-seated kind. And inspiring people to take action, especially when things feel uncertain or risky.
Precisely. It's a cornerstone of psychological safety, really. Creating that space where individuals feel comfortable being vulnerable, taking, calculated risks without fear of ridicule. When people feel genuinely seen and heard, not just their words, but their feelings too, it fosters a much more supportive and, frankly, productive atmosphere.
So it's having that emotional radar, being able to pick up on the subtle cues, and then responding with genuine empathy and, well, care. That combination seems incredibly potent.
It is, and this leads us right into a crucial distinction. The difference between influence and manipulation.
Yes, this feels like a really critical ethical line to draw.
It absolutely is. Influence, when it's done right, aims to connect, to uplift people, to align individuals toward a shared goal or vision. It thrives on transparency, on authentic empathy, and on collaborative effort. Ultimately, it builds trust and it empowers the people involved. Think of it like building bridges between people.
Okay, building bridges. And manipulation then is something else entirely.
Exactly. Manipulation is driven by a desire for control, often involving deception to gain some kind of unfair advantage. It frequently uses tactics that exploit vulnerabilities, things like guilt tripping, instilling fear, sometimes outright lies, the result. A breakdown of trust, and often the creation of dependency. Ethical leadership, the kind that fosters growth
Mhm.
and real collaboration, uses emotional strategy to empower, not to control or, enslave. Manipulation, well, it burns those bridges we just talked about.
That makes perfect sense. And it seems you can't really guide the emotional state of others effectively if you haven't first developed a strong understanding of your own emotional landscape.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's like trying to navigate a foreign country without even knowing where you are on your own map.
That's a great analogy. Authentic leadership really has to start with that internal work with emotional self-awareness. If you're not attuned to your own triggers, your own biases, your own sort of recurring emotional patterns, you'll inevitably struggle to navigate the emotional complexities of others.
So it's about recognizing what pushes your buttons, understanding why you tend to react in certain ways, and maybe even being aware of past experiences, things from your history, that might be unconsciously shaping how you lead.
Precisely. It involves a degree of inner work, yeah. Sometimes that means addressing past hurts or disappointments that might be fueling, say, fear-based decision-making, or maybe an excessive need for control. Cultivating what psychologists sometimes call emotional agility, the capacity to adapt and respond effectively to a whole range of emotional situations, that's vital too. Leaders who are emotionally aware are just much better equipped to meet people where they actually are, rather than expecting everyone else to align with their own emotional state.
Right, meeting them where they are. And when this emotional intelligence is genuinely rooted in empathy and compassion, it sounds like it has the potential to be a real force for healing,
It really does.
not just for individuals, but within teams, maybe even wider communities.
Absolutely. Emotionally intelligent leaders, the really good ones, often demonstrate vulnerability. Not as a weakness, mind you, but as a way to foster genuine connection and trust. They respect and uphold boundaries, both their own and others, without making people feel ashamed or guilty about having them. They validate the emotions of those around them, just acknowledge them without feeling this immediate need to jump in and fix everything. And importantly, they encourage autonomy. They foster independence rather than creating codependence.
It sounds like this approach really cultivates genuine engagement, doesn't it? Where people are invested, they want to contribute, rather than just feeling like they have to follow orders or else.
That's the key difference. Think about it in practice. Imagine a team leader notices this, like palpable tension in a meeting. It's thick. Instead of ignoring it or just powering through the agenda, they might pause and say something simple like, I'm sensing a bit of unease here. Is there anything anyone would like to share or discuss? That simple act of just acknowledging the emotional undercurrent can open the door to really productive dialogue.
Or another example, maybe a teacher or a mentor noticing a student who seems really withdrawn or discouraged after, say, a poor grade. Instead of
Mhm.
just focusing on the missed mark, they might say, look, I understand this is disappointing, but I really have confidence in your abilities. Let's figure out what we can learn from this for next time.
Mm.
That offers both empathy and that renewed belief.
Exactly. Emotional leadership, at its best, is about connection and invitation. It's not about exerting authority through intimidation or creating fear. However, and this is important, it's critical to recognize when these emotional strategies can veer into harmful territory.
Okay, so what are some of those red flags, the telltale signs that things might be taking a negative turn?
Often it stems from the leader's own underlying anxieties, perhaps an overinflated ego, or sometimes a deep-seated belief that resources or opportunities are scarce, a zero-sum game mentality. This can manifest in ways like gaslighting, where someone's perception of reality is systematically undermined. Or maybe love bombing, that overwhelming, often insincere display of affection used to gain influence or control. You might also see leaders deliberately playing on people's emotions, fear, guilt, obligation to maintain control or achieve their own goals, regardless of the cost to others.
It really underscores the importance of the why behind the how, doesn't it? If the primary motivation is personal gain at the expense of others, that's a massive red flag.
Precisely. Ethical leaders prioritize truth and genuine care over the pursuit of power or the exploitation of others' emotions. So how do we cultivate that healthy influence, the kind that's rooted in compassion rather than control?
It sounds like it requires a pretty fundamental shift in mindset, moving away from trying to, force a specific outcome onto people.
Exactly right. The focus shifts. It moves from how can I get them to do what I want to something more like how can I help them align with their own best interests and hopefully our shared objectives. Compassionate leaders, you'll find, actively seek collaboration. They are genuinely open to different viewpoints, even dissenting ones. They value the autonomy of their team members, and they consistently respect boundaries, both given and received.
So it becomes less about issuing directives from on high, yeah, and more about fostering a kind of shared journey.
Absolutely. Influence grounded in compassion is a two-way street. It's a process of mutual understanding and, ideally, mutual growth. And the cornerstone of this entire ethical approach is, well, we've said it before, but it bears repeating, emotional
It
self-awareness.
really does seem to be the absolute foundation upon which everything else has to be built.
It's essential for what we might call emotional hygiene in a leadership context. Practices like reflective journaling can be incredibly insightful. Asking yourself, what emotions am I avoiding? What might I be projecting onto others? Regularly questioning your true intentions behind your actions is also crucial. Why am I really doing this? And even paying attention to physical sensations, noticing where you hold tension in your body, what that tightness in your shoulders might be communicating, can offer valuable clues about your underlying emotional state.
Because without that internal clarity, that self-honesty, even well-intentioned efforts to influence could unintentionally cross the line into manipulation. You might not even realize it.
Exactly. It's like trying to steer a ship with a faulty compass or rudder. You won't end up where you intend. Another critical aspect here is learning to practice empathy effectively, but without becoming completely overwhelmed or enmeshed in the emotions of others.
That concept of empathy without enmeshment. That feels so important for maintaining healthy boundaries for sustainability.
It really is. It's about connecting empathetically, truly understanding and acknowledging someone else's feelings, but without taking those feelings on as your own burden. It's about offering support, being there, without feeling compelled to jump in and fix their situation for them. And crucially, it involves being able to say no with kindness and clarity when necessary to protect your own capacity.
Right, because if you're constantly absorbing the emotional weight of everyone around you, or overextending yourself trying to rescue everyone,
You'll burn out.
yeah, you'll burn out and ultimately diminish your capacity to help anyone effectively in the long run.
Precisely. Empathy without boundaries can lead straight to burnout and resentment. But on the flip side, boundaries without empathy can create distance, alienation, and mistrust. Finding that equilibrium is just vital for effective and sustainable emotional leadership. And finally, it's really important to recognize that as leaders, or really just as people interacting, we all carry our own past experiences, our own emotional baggage, if you like.
Yeah, things like past betrayals, maybe feeling overlooked or abandoned, facing intense pressure or shame. These things can unconsciously influence how we lead and how we attempt to influence others, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. Without conscious awareness and ideally a degree of inner healing work, these past experiences can manifest in really unhealthy leadership patterns. Things like micromanaging, maybe stemming from a deep fear of losing control, which itself comes from past powerlessness. Or perhaps seeking constant external validation through asserting authority. Or even using fear as a tactic, maybe subconsciously, to protect your own underlying vulnerabilities. Addressing these deeper wounds often involves acknowledging your own emotional story, letting go of that need to appear invulnerable all the time, and consciously working to rebuild trust in yourself and in others.
It's a powerful idea that often the most effective leaders aren't necessarily those who've avoided challenges or pain, but those who have learned and grown through them, integrating those experiences.
Absolutely. And related to this, adopting a trauma-informed perspective can be incredibly valuable in understanding the emotional dynamics we encounter every day. Just recognizing that people's strong reactions are often rooted in past survival mechanisms, developed for good reasons back then, rather than being personal attacks or simple disrespect in the present moment, that can fundamentally shift our approach.
So instead of just reacting to the behavior, you're trying to understand the potential story behind it.
Exactly. It leads to prioritizing psychological safety in our interactions, trying to build trust through consistent, safe behavior rather than demanding it through authority. It means viewing mistakes, both our own and others, as opportunities for learning, for repair, for growth, rather than as reasons for punishment, blame, or rejection. These principles, they really foster a sense of belonging and resilience within a team or community.
It sounds like creating an environment where people feel secure enough to be authentic, to mess up occasionally, and to learn from those experiences without being shamed.
Precisely. And on a practical, everyday level, demonstrating this kind of emotional integrity often involves consistent, sometimes small, actions. Things like simply naming emotions when you perceive them, It seems like you might be feeling frustrated right now, or validating someone's experience, even if you don't share their perspective. I can see why you'd feel that way, given what happened.
Hmm.
Being transparent about your intentions when you make requests or decisions. And, crucially, taking responsibility for your impact on others, not just hiding behind your good intentions. I intended X, but I see the impact was Y, and I'm sorry for that.
Those seemingly small acts of emotional integrity done consistently can really build a powerful foundation of trust and empowerment over time, can't they?
They absolutely do. They're the bedrock. So, as we start to wrap up this deep dive into emotional strategy, I'd really encourage you, our listeners, to take a moment to reflect on the emotional currents in your own interactions. How are you perceiving them? And consciously or unconsciously, how are you influencing them?
Yeah, that term, Machiavellian intelligence, when we strip it back to its core, it really just illuminates the inherent power in understanding and navigating the emotional world around us. But the crucial insight, I think, from our discussion today is that this power is most effective, most sustainable, and most ethical when it arises not from a place of ego or desire to control, but from a solid foundation of self-awareness and genuine compassion.
hmm Think about the fundamental difference between attempting to move people through manipulation, using fear, guilt, deception, and inspiring them through authentic connection, through shared understanding and purpose. Which path do you believe ultimately leads to more lasting and meaningful outcomes? Not just for you, but for everyone involved.
It's definitely something to ponder. We really encourage you to take some time to reflect on the emotional landscapes you navigate, both externally in your relationships and teams and internally within yourself. What resonated with you most in our discussion today? What questions are maybe still lingering for you? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a real pleasure exploring this. We look forward to digging into more of these fascinating aspects of human behavior with you in future discussions.